Welcome to Dare to Be Seen, brought to you by Alyssa Vulpes Productions and EDN Publishing. Join our host, Alyssa DiNapoli, aka Alyssa Vulpes, author, artist coach, hypnotherapist, singer-songwriter, and drummer, as she engages in down-to-earth, insightful, and inspiring conversations with female indie singer-songwriters around a virtual campfire. We shall discuss the lessons, songs, and personal stories of women who dare to be seen, scratching beneath the surface to give you an insider look into what makes their chosen career sometimes challenging and yet always inescapably compelling. So let's get the show started.
Welcome to another episode of Dare to Be Seen. I'm your host, Elisa Di Napoli, aka Elisa Vulpes, and today's episode features Josephine Sillars. Josephine is a musician originally from the Highlands in Scotland, but now based in Leeds, UK. Having been based between Glasgow and Edinburgh for the past few years, she gained recognition performing with the band the Manic Pixie Dreams. After receiving support from Help Musicians UK, she's currently working on a new EP titled Desperate Characters, due for release later this year. Now, before we meet our guests for today, I would like to invite you to go to tinyurl.com/podfreebies. And you will be able to download the 6 fundamental mind hacks for lasting performance success, where you will learn how to communicate effectively with your mind so you can command the stage and magnify your presence when performing in front of an audience of any size. And now, here's our guest for today.
I sometimes face discrimination because of my gender, but it's not nearly to the extent that women of colour receive, or disabled women, or any other intersectional issue, really. Like, I have to note my privilege at the start of this. Is it love? Is it love? Is it love? Feminism to me, especially working in music, it's when I'm the only woman on a lineup with 6 men constantly. It's when there's no women on main stages at festivals. It's when there's hardly any women that work in production. It's when the sound engineer is always a man. It's when you walk into a space and you're the only woman, and I can't imagine how that feels for people, you know, who are non-binary, who are transgender, who again come at a sort of another intersection of these topics. We're paying. Don't speak if it starts with hesitation. Is it love? Or is it fiction? Things have improved, but there's still a long way to go. So I think it's important that people are having these conversations. Is it love? Is it love? Is it
Hello, Josephine. Josephine is joining us from Leeds today. So welcome to the show, Josephine.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So I'm very excited to have Josephine on. I really love her voice, and she's got great titles for her songs and EPs. I'm going to be asking a lot about those. But first of all, how's it going in Leeds at the moment? What's the situation like for you?
Yeah, it's okay. So I'm down in Leeds at the moment because I'm studying. So I'm just about to finish my master's in literally the next 10 days, which is fun. But I mean, not to be shady to England, but politically, I definitely chose an interesting time to move to England.
So your master is about to finish. Do you mind telling us what the master is on?
Yeah, it's in music. So I was originally doing performance, but I've switched now to composition because obviously with the coronavirus situation, we can't do any live performances anymore. So it's yeah, it is just creative music is like the title of the masters, but I'm specializing in composition.
That sounds actually really interesting. So it's I take it that it's been a journey that you started before the lockdown began.
Yeah, yeah. So I started last September, so it's a year-long course. And my first sort of 6 months in Leeds were great. You know, just moved here, didn't know very many people, made lots of friends with lots of interesting people. It's a really great city. It reminds me very much of Glasgow, which is where I was living before I moved. Like the cities have a very similar energy, very similar sense of humor, great music scenes. But then for the lockdown to hit, like halfway through the course was interesting, certainly, because, I no longer had access to the university, to the facilities. I was playing in quite a few bands as well with other students, and then all of that fell apart. I lost so much work. um, but we've kind of settled into it now, I guess, though, getting used to the new normal.
So do you think you've actually changed direction in your career towards composition?
Um, I don't know if change direction is necessarily the the way I would put it because I've always been interested in composition and over the last couple of years it's something that I've been working in a lot more. Like last year, myself and a team of other musicians actually composed the music for a video game that's coming out at the end of this year. So composition has been something I've been interested in, but I suppose yeah, you're right. Until the coronavirus hit, um, I was focusing on performance, and in the academic sense, performance was the goal for this course. And now I've moved into composition because I think that in light of the entire gig economy falling apart, I think composition's probably going to be where the jobs are at in music. I guess like I want to make a career in music. I don't care what I do, just as long as it's in music.
Great
um,
attitude.
yeah.
So have you always been making music, in your life? Did this passion start when you were little, or is it something that developed?
No, I did. It started when I was quite young. So, both my parents play instruments, and I was forced into piano lessons from like age 6, which is embarrassing because you'd really think I'd be a better piano player, uh, given the amount of lessons that my parents forced me into. But I was really bad at it. I was rubbish at piano for years and years, and it literally took until I was like 14 and started learning covers on YouTube that I then kind of got the hang of it. And then that's when the songwriting sort of came through. Because for me, I can't really read music, so I was never very good in like the classical music settings. Which, when you have piano lessons when you're a kid, let's be honest, it's always classical piano that you're given. So I was rubbish at that. But then when I discovered songwriting and like learning covers of songs I actually enjoyed, that's when the real passion sort of began.
Okay, and so when you say composition, what do you compose on? Do you use programs to compose, or?
Well, I've been sort of functioning as a singer-songwriter, I guess, for years and years and years. So for me, I just like work from the instrument, write songs, in that sense. But over lockdown, my thing that I've learned over lockdown is basic production. So I have been learning to record and compose as I go, working with sort of MIDI instruments. That's been a whole new thing that I've learned over lockdown, which has been really interesting.
Right. So do you think you'll continue to use this software?
I think so, yeah, and I think especially as it doesn't look like live gigs are gonna be coming back anytime soon, at least as how we know them. I think, yeah, it's gonna be quite a good thing for me to focus my energies on for now.
Yeah, I've actually started myself refreshing my production skills on Logic. Do you use a particular program that you prefer?
Garage band.
All right.
I cannot stress how new to production I am. I'm very, very new to it. My flatmate uses a software called Reason, I believe, and my other bandmate uses Reaper. That's it. Yeah, so I'm kind of familiar with both of those, but I've not really tried them out myself yet. At the moment, I'm just getting to grips with GarageBand.
So, in terms of your creative expression, why would you say you write songs? What compels you to do it?
Oh, that's a really good question. See, I don't really know how to answer that because I've now been doing it for so long. It comes very natural to me. Even when I have like bouts of writer's block, which does happen, and like there's been times where I've not written a song for a year because just stress, external things happening, and just not being creative. But um, I don't really know because I've been writing music since I was quite a young teenager. Getting into that mindset of writing, like getting up and going, I'm going to write a song today, just feels quite natural to me at this point. So I don't really know. I'm just used to it, I guess. That's a rubbish answer to a good question. I'm sorry.
I won't forgive you. I was interested in your writer's block, though. So you said you have experienced it before, up to a year. So what got you out of it? What would you like to share with maybe somebody who may be going through that sort of thing now?
So for me, quite honestly, I've had really bad bouts of writer's block throughout my professional career, and like the worst one was when I didn't write a song for a whole year. And that ended around this time last year. So it was like a year, but from 2 years ago was when I had that last big bout of writer's block. And for me, the biggest thing to get out of it was I just needed to change my schedule, my the way I was living. I just everything in my life needed a shake up, and I think that the writer's block was a result of just being stagnant in life. Because you can't write music, you can't write songs. Like if you're a songwriter who works with lyrics like I do, you need to be experiencing things, you need to be meeting people and doing stuff so that inspiration inspiration comes. Like I'm not really a believer in just sitting around at home and waiting for inspiration to hit. Like I very much feel you can go out, make your own luck, make your own inspiration. So I was at that time I was working in like an office. It was a very, very high stress, very tense, high pressure job, full-time hours, living paycheck to paycheck. It wasn't like a good place to be creative. So I quit that job, which I'm not recommending everyone do. Like, do not do what I did if you're not able to, because the only reason I was able to was because I then around that time got accepted into the course, so I was going back to uni. But quite genuinely, if you are in a sort of stagnant place, you're suffering from writer's block, the biggest advice I can do is just try and break up your schedule a bit. Go a day trip somewhere, go meet friends that you wouldn't usually see. I mean, maybe obviously not at the moment, that's going to be a lot harder. Um, but yeah, that was the biggest thing for me was just if your life is going in quite a mundane way, you can't really expect yourself to be creative if there's nothing nothing really happening to inspire you. Does that make
Yeah, it
sense?
makes sense. Yeah, I mean, there's I don't know if you know about, the kind of right brain, left brain idea. Of course, it is just, it's not exactly like that scientifically, but if you are always doing left brain activities, it can be difficult to switch into that other way of thinking. And often I find that sometimes it can be good to have a bit of a ritual or an artistic practice that helps you to get into flow, if you like, a creative process. Do you have one of those things, or do you just write when you get inspired?
I used to just always write when I felt inspired, but now I'm trying a new approach because I'm also a very, very slow writer. I kind of take like the Fiona Apple approach, and like maybe you'll get an album every like 7 or 8 years if you're lucky. That's kind of how I go. I'm so slow, but I'm trying to force myself out of that. And my new sort of technique for that is to focus less on lyrics because I lyrics are like a big, big focus of my music. So I'm trying to take a step back from that. And if I'm writing a song now, I'll try and start with the music because it's obviously not easier to write music than lyrics. They're both quite difficult if you're doing them to quite a high level. Um, but I can spend weeks to months slaving over lyrics. Whereas if you just let yourself have fun with the music, like I'm trying to take the pressure off myself, not give myself a hard time, and just get back into the enjoyment. And then I find once I'm enjoying what I'm doing, everything flows so much easier.
Right. So, do you have things that inspire you? Where do you get your inspiration from? Because you mentioned experiencing things outside, but unfortunately, at the moment, that's a little bit difficult. So, how do you deal with that?
Well, this is actually kind of the crux of what my new EP is about. So the new project I'm working on is called Desperate Characters, and it's an EP of new material which I have written sort of between March and now, basically just over lockdown. Um, and to combat those feelings of, oh, I'm trapped inside and I can't see anyone. How am I supposed to be creative in this environment? So I've combated that by doing Skype interviews with just lots of different people in my life. And what I've done is I've taken sound bites and samples from those interviews and I've based songs around them. So I've written well, I've written more than five, but I think probably five or six are going to go on the EP. But I've written these bunch of songs which include parts of people speaking from the interviews, and the songs are basically around the theme of whatever the interview was about. So it's been quite a fun challenge creatively. I kind of have treated it more like if you were to get a commercial brief for a song, like someone would say, I want a song that sounds like this, that is about this, um, go away and do it. So I kind of wrote a brief for every song. It was like, this one's going to be about, off the top of my head, right, there's one that's kind of about environmental issues. So I was like, I want this one to be um, about, I don't want to give too much away, sorry, because we're in like the recording process at the moment. This one's getting recorded in the next couple of days. But I just wrote out a brief for how I wanted it to sound, what I wanted it to be about, and which quotes I was using, and then launched the song from there.
Wow, that's really super interesting, actually. I would have never thought of doing that kind of thing. And do you have specific topics that are really important to you then?
Me personally, I do. Yeah, I made a joke about this actually recently because uh basically all of my songs are about feminism. I'm sorry, I can't help it. It's just, oh look, there goes me again writing another song about how it's hard to be a woman.
Well, it is hard, and I think that's a worthwhile topic.
Totally, yeah, that's like my fallback topic, definitely, like power dynamics, power struggles, feminism, etc.
I mean, it's better than I love you, please come back to me, baby.
Yeah, totally. Not that there's not a time and place for those songs.
Of
There definitely
course.
is, but I tend to get a little more angry.
Well, there's a place for that, definitely. And better to be angry in a song than get out there and, do something that you regret later.
Totally, totally. Better to channel it through something creative than just being an ass to people.
Yeah. I mean, you could always go and just beat your mattress to a pulp, but,
Totally.
that's another way. So it sounds to me like your identity really revolves around music. That for you it is really important in your life in terms of how to shape your identity. And I guess I want to ask you a question that is dear to my heart because it's there's a lot of pressure sometimes on musicians to be successful, and I wonder what success to you actually means.
It's a very good question. And there's actually two songs actually in this new EP kind of touch on this actually. Because I think lockdown has given me the opportunity anyway to evaluate what success means. And I think that's been the case for a lot of creative people, especially because at the start, I'm definitely not the only one whose work just vanished overnight. And everything became quite uncertain for like a freelance creative, basically, especially as freelancers were very much left behind by the government for the initial months. So this has been something I've been thinking about, and I'm sure a lot of people have. But for me, I think we put too much pressure on ourselves to be constantly putting out content when you're a creative freelancer, whether that's in music or another discipline. Um, and the idea of being successful, I think, gets too wrapped up around how much of yourself you can put out there. And because I write music under my own name, like I don't have a stage name, or I did used to play with a band, but again, it was like Josephine Sillars and Manic Pixie Dreams, which was the band. So it's a lot of pressure to make yourself the content, if you know what I mean. Like you are the product. So I've been trying to reevaluate what success means to me, because I'm kind of not about just not about becoming a product. That's not how I want to be. I just want to work in music in whatever capacity I can make a good living from, and I just want to live my life and live from music and not have to work a job that I'm not passionate about, not have to, you know, slave away for hours in hospitality like I've been doing for the past however many years. But I do think that people need to stop measuring success in like how much you kill yourself over making content, because it's not healthy and it's not sustainable.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of that going on, and I think it can actually produce burnout. If you're trying to put out content, also it might be that that content isn't that great.
Yeah, totally. If you're putting something out constantly, where's your quality check? Like surely, like I'm constantly telling, I know loads of musicians who are like this, who are just constantly dropping albums and dropping EPs and like, here's a new song, boom, 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 boom. And it's like, okay, firstly, that's great that you're so creative that you can do that. I would love to be able to write a new album every like month or whatever, but when you're putting stuff out there, firstly, you need to make sure that it's really good, something that you're proud of, because once it's out there, it's out there. And there's stuff I released when I was younger that I wish I hadn't. Do you know what I mean? And but also you need to give your audience a moment to just enjoy what you've released. So if you're constantly putting out new stuff, how can you expect people to really get to enjoy what you've released? Because you're just immediately throwing something new in their face, like I kind of use that to justify though how little I release. So I don't know. There's definitely a balance. I'm too far on one side, and I know musicians that are too far on the other.
Yeah. So life work balance, that seems to be a very important thing for you.
Definitely.
And so going back to the subject of feminism, since it's what you really care about, I'd like to explore that a little bit more. So I guess I'm interested in, first of all, what does feminism mean to you? How do you define it? Because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding around that word.
There definitely is, and I'm not going to pretend as well that I am 100% the expert on feminism. Like I learn more about feminism every day, um, and I also think it's important to note that I am a white woman. I grew up in a middle class environment. I've got a very supportive family, and as it goes, Ugh, the only thing really that works against me sometimes is that I sometimes face discrimination because of my gender, but it's not nearly to the extent that women of color receive, or disabled women, or any other intersectional issue, really. Like, I have to note my privilege at the start of this. Do you know what I mean? Because I don't want to pretend that, oh, my life's so hard, because it's not compared to a lot of people's. Like I am very lucky. So with that in mind, I mean, feminism to me, especially working in music, it's when I'm the only woman on a lineup with six men constantly. It's when there's no women on main stages at festivals. It's when there's hardly any women that work in production. It's when the sound engineer is always a man. It's when you walk into a space and you're the only woman, and I can't imagine how that feels for people, who are non-binary, who are transgender, who again come at a sort of another intersection of these topics. So feminism is important to me in the music industry in particular, because while things have improved, but there's still a long way to go. So I think it's important that people are having these conversations, and initiatives as well, such as Key Change. I think are doing a really great job to raise awareness.
Would you like to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Key Change is an initiative that do you know, I don't actually know off the top of my head who set it up. I want to say PRS are involved somehow, but I don't know off the top of my head. But basically, they have a pledge that venues, organizations, managers, individuals, underrepresented artists can sign and join, and it's to strive for 50-50 gender equality. I think by 2022. Again, I could be wrong about the date, but festivals such as Primavera have signed it, and that's why you see such amazing gender balance on their lineups because they have signed this pledge. They are working with the movement to actually bring about change. A venue actually from my hometown contacted me recently to write an endorsement for them as well because they've recently signed it as well, which is really, really great. And we need the smaller venues as well as the big festivals to get on board with this. Off the top of my head, though, I will say I don't want to name and shame people, but it's surprising how many festivals haven't signed it. Like, if you go onto their website, you can see a list of all the signatures, and there's a lot of big names missing in the UK market. So hopefully that they'll all get on that.
Yeah, that sort of change does take a long time, and it's great that there's some organizations are actually doing something about it. I was wondering, still going on to the same topic, did you ever feel a pressure to look a certain way, to get the attention for your music?
Yes. Short answer. Did I do anything about it? No. I'd like to say that that's because I'm a staunch feminist, but it's really just because I'm lazy. Uh, no, but it is a pressure that I felt, especially when I was younger. Like when I first moved away from the Highlands and moved down to Glasgow. I've lived in Glasgow and Edinburgh, but I moved to Glasgow first. I mean, everyone in Glasgow dresses very well. Not gonna lie, it's there's it's a much it takes culture like a 10 extra years to hit the top of Scotland. So I moved to Glasgow and was like, wow, I don't know how to dress. I look ugly. And I'd be going to gigs and dressing just so badly, and then I'd be seeing other women dressing really well. So for me, I kind of feel like I did feel that pressure, especially when I saw a lot of younger female musicians who are around my age. Um, again, I do think that I was quite lucky and that it could have been a lot worse, but the pressure is there. You see other young women being more provocative with the way that they present themselves on stage, and I think that's amazing for and self empowerment and all that. But it was very daunting as like a sort of late teen to arrive in that scene and be like, oh, I'm not presenting myself in the way that I should, you know.
Should, and says who?
Exactly, that's the thing says too. And then half the time you spoke to any of these women, they were loving their life. They were doing what they wanted to do, and it was cool. They were just more fashionable than me. Basically, was the crux of that. But I know, yeah, the pressure is there, and I think when you look at the wider scene, especially in pop music in a global market, it's when you see young female songwriters and singers in their late teens, early 20s who look very, very glamorous. They're very sexy. They they're tiny, and it it does have a knock-on effect to songwriters around the country. Like, I'm pretty sure every single female musician has looked at themselves and thought, "Oh, I should look more like so and so." But I never did anything about it other than start dressing a little better because, again, very lazy, very lazy.
Right. And have you ever been told, oh, you should wear this kind of clothes, you should be.
Yeah, I have by uh, male members of the music scene. Not, I've never been told that by a promoter, but I have been told that by like other male musicians when I was younger, especially. Now people don't really say that sort of stuff to me, which is good. But when I was younger, yeah, I'd have like men come up to me and be like, "Oh, have you tried like dressing like this?" And it's like, leave me alone. When I was younger, I mean, I remember being like 19 and somebody once saying to me at a gig, "Why don't you dress more like so and so?" And was chatting about another woman who was on the bill. Like, "Why don't you dress more like her?" And it was like, at the time, I didn't know how to take that because I was quite young, but now I look back on that and it's like I'd have slapped him if someone said that to me now.
Yes. And also the short answer is because I'm not her, and also what a stupid question to ask,
It
really.
is. It's like we're not here. We're not doing a fashion show. It's not a competition to see who looks the best. It's a gig.
And also, like I've got a difficulty thinking about a woman asking a man the same question. And
Yeah.
that's my gauge, because if you feel weird asking the same question that you've been asked to a man, then it means there's some kind of sexist agenda going on. Do you feel you had to fight harder than if you had been more a man to get ahead? For example, getting better gigs or be taken seriously?
Yeah, no, genuinely, it's to be honest, it's not something I think about as much now, but that's because I've been doing music for like a long time at this point, so I'm a lot more sure of myself, and I know how to speak to promoters, to bookers, and I have a track record now to back me up. But when I was younger and when I was starting out, yeah, I mean, it's something that's on your mind certainly when you see like male musicians in the scene that started at the same time as you, getting opportunities that you don't. And obviously part of that is down to the fact that these men are very talented. They're very good at what they do. I'm not, disregarding anyone's talent when I say this, but it's something that's in the back of your mind. You'll never know for sure, I guess. But one thing that I remember when I was younger was when I was like 16, 17, still living in Inverness. I spent all my money that I'd saved up from working, uh to go on like a wee tour. And I mean I played like not real venues. I played like a cafe in Glasgow, like a pub in Stirling, and I really shouldn't have been in those pubs because I was under 18. Haha. But it wasn't like a real tour, it wasn't real venues, but I was just desperate to play. So I went off on the megabus with my keyboard and off I went. And then I applied for like a touring network for young people and was knocked back for having too much experience. I don't know, it's things like that. If I were a man, would someone have seen that and been like, wow, look, this girl took, or this man took initiative, you know, we should support that. But so, I mean, you'll just never know. That's the problem. That's the problem with sexism in the industry. So much of the time, it's a microaggression. It's not overt. You just can't tell what people's intentions are. So.
Yeah, and actually that fits well with my next question, because sometimes discrimination can be quite subtle. So, for example, could be some subtle put downs or implicit expectations of the kind of role that you would play within a band. There's been this kind of implicit understanding that because I'm a woman, well, I'm probably just a singer. I'm probably not such a good guitar player. I'm probably not good at drums. Whenever somebody comes into my house and they see the drums, they always look at my boyfriend and go, "Oh, you play the drums."
Right. It's funny to say that because when I played with a band, my band were all men, uh, and that's why I called my band the Manic Pixie Dreams, because I feel like people stereotyped me into being a Manic Pixie Dream girl a lot of the time because I'm kind of quirky looking and I play piano, and like, do you know what I mean? So I kind of thought it was ironic to call my all male backing band the Manic Pixie Dreams. I thought, oh, that's funny. But then at gigs, people would ask them questions about the songs after the set. Like people were going up to my drummer and being like, "Hey, what was that song?" And he'd be like, "I don't know. Why don't you ask Josephine, who's like the leader who wrote the song?" But people would always speak to them instead of me. It was like really strange, really strange.
Yeah, there's an assumption that you're just a singer. You couldn't possibly be the actual leader of the band. And what was it like to be the leader of this all-male band?
Oh, it was fun. I mean, it wasn't an all male band on purpose, but because it was just a situation of like, I mean, sometimes I've had a woman guitarist join me a few times as like a backup when other members of the band couldn't make gigs. But half the problem I had with getting women into my band was that all the women musicians I know are doing their own projects, so no one had time. That was genuinely the reason. Otherwise, Like my friend Baldina, who is a songwriter under the name Heir of the Cursed, she joined me for a gig on guitar when my guitarist couldn't make it. And literally, if she had had the time to be in my band, I'd have loved for her to be in the band. But again, all the women I know are too busy ruling the universe. So, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Like actually my guitarist from my old band in Glasgow, he's a solo act as well. His name's Connor Heavey. So do anyone listening go check out his music because he is genuinely wonderful.
Awesome. And I was wondering, in terms of style of leadership, I had my own band a few times, and when I first started and I was quite young, I felt it was very weird for me to be the leader of the band. I felt quite shy, I felt quite reticent, and I think at times I actually wasn't very good because I was scared of being called, a bitch or bossy or something like that, So I held back. And then I had another band in which I felt more like mother, just sort of taking care of everyone. So I wonder, what influence do you think being a woman has had on, if anything, if any, on your style?
I hate it when my bands call me mum. I hate it. It's awful because my boyfriend's actually my bass player, and sometimes he'll go like "mum," and it's like, no, that's so weird. Don't say that. Do not do that when I'm being when I'm like demanding band stuff of everyone. But I know what you mean. Like I think musically with my old band in Glasgow, I was scared of stepping on toes, even though it was my music. Like a lot of the time I was pretty bad at telling the musicians what I wanted, if you know what I mean. I just kind of let them do their own thing because I mean, I'm very collaborative. I love collaborating and working with people in that sense. But if I wanted something done a specific way in a song, I would like tiptoe around around saying it, which then would be quite good again because my boyfriend plays bass in the band, so he would know what I wanted, so he would tell them for me, which was nice of him. But at the same time, it was like, why did I feel that way? My bandmates are all my friends. It's my music. But you're totally right. As you don't want to come across as like a bitch or like a boss because just because of how people assume that with gender. Um, but in terms of paying my band, organizing gigs, yeah, I very much mother them in that sense. Like I like to be organized and make sure everyone knows what they're doing. I like sort out my band before I sort out myself. Like there's been countless times when we going to festivals where I'll have got them a car, got all of their equipment sorted, got them a driver, and there's not enough room in the car for me. So I send them all off in a car with all of their stuff, all super organized. And I'm like, how do I get to the festival? Like that happens a couple
Oh,
of times
God.
actually.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think women are very good at, just taking care of everyone else. And I think partly is, or maybe mainly, I'm not sure where this comes from, whether it's a culture thing, whether we are just expected because of centuries of being told that that's our role, or whether it is innate, like we've been told that it is. What's your opinion there?
Part of me feels that as the band leader, looking after the band is a responsibility because it's my band, it's my name, and they're at the end of the day doing me a favor by being in the band and helping with the music and making the project bigger than it could have been by myself. So I do feel a responsibility in that regard. But at the same time, like my bandmates have told me that like they've never been in a band like what they have with me in that I really look after them compared to some other bands that they've been in. So at the same time, while I do feel I need to be responsible for that to a certain degree, I think I do go a little too far. But I mean, I'm like that to live with. Like I'm the person that can't leave the kitchen dirty. I need to clean it. Do you know what I mean? I think I overlook after things in every aspect of my life,
So
to be
you're the
honest.
perfect flatmate, in other
I
words.
am.
And in terms of relationships within bands, because you said your bass player was a boyfriend, I used to have that kind of thing going on sometimes in some bands, and then I had some bad experiences, so I had a rule that I was like, right, never again am I going to go out with someone and that I have a band with. How did it go for you? Did you have any problems around that, or not really?
We actually met because he became my bass player. Uh, yeah, so I kind of didn't have it as a rule per se, but when we first started dating, it was something I was aware of because it was like because Jamie's an excellent bass player. He's very, very good, and he's a very good singer as well. So the few times I've had to do a gig without him, I've had to replace him with two people, one person to play the bass and then one person to sing his harmonies. Like he's he's very good in the band. I don't want him to leave the band. So I mean, so far it's been fine. He's been in the band 3 years. We've been dating 2. So it's going okay, but I know what you mean. It was something at the beginning of the relationship I was a bit like, "Hmm, this is either gonna go really well or really bad."
Yeah, because if not in your case, but if you go out with someone in the band and then you break up, it can be difficult to keep the band going. In terms of instead of your relationship with other women songwriters, what's that been like? Has there been competition or more a feeling of camaraderie?
A bit of both, I think. When I was younger, it felt competitive, but I think that's because growing up in Inverness, it's a great music scene, but it's not a big music scene. It's not a big city. Do you know what I mean? It is a city, but it's a big town, really. So it felt competitive then, but that's literally because there was only so many slots in the venues, and there happened to be when I was growing up, there are a lot of female singer songwriters. Like I was so fortunate to grow up surrounded by so many women musicians, women my age as well and older. It was so that was great, but I was competitive with everyone, not just women, and that was literally just because of a lack of opportunity up in the Highlands. But now, it's definitely much more of a community. There's actually a group that I'm a part of called Pop Girls Scotland that was started. Do you know? I don't know who started it. I know it was a girl called Rachel who performs under the name Cola who added me to the group. I'm not sure if she runs it or not. She might, but it's a really great group, and it's basically all the women in Scotland who work within pop all together on the one community. And we chat a lot. We share our music. If someone's got a dodgy offer from a promoter, we like name and shame in the group and chat about what's best to do about the situation. Like it's super, super community led. And I think, especially given that we don't know what's going to happen to gigs in the future, that's more important than ever.
Absolutely, absolutely. And is there a singer songwriter that has been an inspiration for you in your career so far?
I think musically, I take a lot of inspiration from the likes of Regina Spektor, Ben Folds, Fiona Apple, that sort of thing. Catherine Joseph, she won Scottish Album of the Year, I think, in 2015, but I find her very, very inspiring, especially because, well, firstly, she plays piano, she sings, her albums are like beautiful piano and like ambient drumming, and it's just that's my vibe. I love that. But she's also a mother, she's not like a 19-year-old pop star. She has been grafting at music and working hard, and she won. I mean, she. I think I don't know off the top of my head, but I think she was in her late 30s or 40s when she won Scottish Album of the Year. And I remember when that happened, being like, "Oh my god!" So an adult woman who's like an actual adult with children who plays piano and sings has won Scottish Album of the Year. There's hope for us all. Like, that's what it felt like when she won that, so I find her very inspiring, and she's also just a lovely person. She's so nice.
Maybe we should get her on this podcast.
Yeah, you should, she's amazing.
So, Josephine, before we get your song played, I wanted to ask you about your EP because you mentioned it's called Desperate Characters. It's coming out next week?
No, it's not coming out next week, but it will be finished in the next week, so there's not a release date set as yet, but I'm hoping it will be out in the autumn.
Right. So, do you want to tell us a bit about it?
So yeah, as I mentioned it a wee bit earlier, but Desperate Characters, it's my first EP since 2015, so I'm really excited. There are songs that sort of discuss environmentalism, there are songs that discuss just personal feelings throughout the whole situation, as well as larger political themes. Because the whole point of the EP is I wanted to discuss the social and political landscape in this current time, I was initially planning to do it as an album, in the sort of aftermath of Brexit. I wanted to talk to people about that, but then COVID happened, and then I was like, I don't know if I want to do an entire album based on COVID, to be honest. So turned it into an EP instead. But I'm really happy with how it's coming out, and I was also very, very fortunate to receive funding for this. So this EP is also funded by Help Musicians UK through their Do It Differently fund.
Awesome. Yeah, I think a whole album on COVID might be a bit too much. But
That's what I thought, yeah. But I didn't want to scrap the idea completely. So yeah, that's why it's an EP.
yeah, I wrote one song on COVID, and man, that was a bit of a difficult one because I think I write sometimes I write cabaret songs, and I think people are not maybe ready to laugh about it. Even though I do think that it's important.
I would like to hear that though. That sounds good. I I think it's funny you say people aren't ready to laugh at it, but I think the best thing I've seen that someone's released about COVID was, I don't know if you saw the rehearsing a play short dram comedy that Michael Sheen and David Tennant did over lockdown. I think you can watch it on iPlayer, but they just recorded themselves on like Zoom or whatever, of them playing characterized versions of themselves trying to rehearse a play over Zoom, and it's so funny and it's so lighthearted, and they talk about lockdown, they talk about COVID, but not in a way that's scary. It is lighthearted. So I think what you've just discussed there, I would love to hear that, because I think people are getting ready to laugh about it. We need to not be so serious about it at the moment. Now that we're at the 6 month mark, especially.
Yeah, and I think when things like this happen, humor can actually be a life savior. It's like in that movie by Roberto Benigni. I'm Italian, so I saw that movie a long time ago. Life is Beautiful, and it's about the Holocaust, and of course the Holocaust isn't funny, but that's not what the movie is about. It's about being able to actually, in that case, find something that still makes life worth living, even in the midst of tragedy and all of that. So,
I wouldn't discount your song on it. I'd like to hear it.
okay, I'll put it out. Um, so you're gonna play us a song live, and this song is called "February Has a Smoking Problem," and I love this title. Please tell me about it.
Yeah, so this is an old song of mine. I was trying to think which one I was going to do, and because obviously I work with quite a few musicians now, I was just trying to think of one that I could genuinely just do solo. So this one is from my 2015 EP, and it's an old favorite. It's funny that we were talking about how most of my songs are feminist and political and angry. This is actually probably as close as it gets to a love song from me. But I wrote it just after I first moved to Glasgow, and it's very much about that feeling of going from feeling like big fish, small pond to big pond, small fish. Because I found moving to Glasgow quite difficult initially. It took me like a year or two to really settle in. Um, so it's kind of about, it is kind, I say it's a love song, and it is, but more so about my relationship with the city at that time, and it's about how I was so enamored with the idea, and then when I got there, it was a lot more challenging than I thought it was gonna be.
Okay, great.
February smokes a cigarette on the street corner. No, her lips are full and her eyes are blue, and you aren't sure what it is you're doing. February sends you all her love. Her dress is red and gorgeous, but her head is full of lust, and you She'll make you groan until you shudder, but she's not a loyal lover, and she isn't sure what it is you're doing. No, she isn't sure what it is you're doing. And somewhere out there, there's a girl just being dumped, and she's trying her eyes by an ATM. And somewhere out there, there's a boy who just broke that girl's heart. And I'll comfort her to the best of my ability, and hope that someday somebody will do the same for me, for me. Do the same for me. Oh, February smokes until she cannot taste. February smokes until her voice is a waste. February smokes until she starts to fade, starts to fade, till she starts to fade, till she starts to fade.
Catchy, really catchy song. It's already in my ear. La, da, 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 da.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, well,
Thank you.
if
It's an old favourite.
anyone listening would like to hear more of Josephine, head on over to our website, josephinesillars.weebly.com. Is that correct, Josephine?
Yes, that is correct. And I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and Spotify. I will say, if anyone who hasn't heard me before and wants to check me out, I have two Spotify accounts. One is for with my old band, and one's just solo. The solo one is going to be getting a makeover very soon, and that's where the new EP will be coming out. It'll be coming out on the one that's just Josephine Sillars.
All right. So once again, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast today. It was really lovely to talk to you, and all the best with your upcoming EP release.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. This has been so lovely.
That was my guest, whom I'd like to thank once again for coming to the show. Every week, I'll be chatting to fantastic indie performers to uncover what it really takes to be a female, independent singer-songwriter in this day and age, and how we can support one another to keep shining our light onto the world through our creative endeavors. So make sure you don't miss out by subscribing to Dare to Be Seen, and follow us on socials at tinyurl.com/daretobeseenpod.
That's all for this episode of Dare to Be Seen. Join the conversation on facebook.com/groups/Dare to Be Seen podcast, and help create an empowering community of independent female singer-songwriters who support one another. For show notes, resources, and information on today's episode, visit tinyurl.com/daretobeseenpod. And remember to shine your own unique light onto the world. It needs it.